Here we go. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Multidisciplinary, self-taught, and always evolving, Tyler Keeton Robbins consistently maintains a heavy illustrative style that transcends his medium of choice. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest and coming of age during the 90s, the bold shapes found in the rich art of the surrounding First Nations and the illustrated subculture of skateboarding's second wave left an indelible mark. With internationally exhibited works ranging from pen and paper, paintings, and murals of upscaled mark making, Robbins continues to explore the softer side of abstract symbolism, applying evocative form to diverse surfaces. He has worked closely with brands such as Starbucks, Burton, REI, creating large-scale prints for in-store design, textile, and hard goods. He currently lives in the Okanagan Valley with his family, working out of the studio in the Rotary Center for the Arts in Kelowna. So welcome, Tyler.
Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining the conversation. So let's just get straight into it. Would you please describe your artwork to us?
Okay, I guess at face value, you're looking at an acrylic on canvas painting or panel maybe. A couple things you'll probably notice is the high value and the low value at first. Also polarized line and texture, and oftentimes will polarize negative and positive shape. So when I think about themes and context, this is more in a retrospective sense. I don't go into a painting with a mandate or an idea usually. So I think in retrospect, there's a few things that have shaped this. I've always been in awe of my environment growing up on the coast of BC. Everything is alive all year round. You know, it doesn't just exist. It's glowing green and bursting with life. So you're always reminded you're living in this prehistoric rainforest. So my appreciation for this has always been, I think, present in my themes. Thinking of early influences that shaped my work, my appreciation for the art of the First Nations, especially the Haida Gwaii, was really supplanted by my grade 11 art teacher. These images at an early age, like, really resonated with me. I found them, like, now I appreciate them a lot fuller, but they're just masters of spatial harmony. And now when I look back at my work, I see they harmonize shape, and I see that polarizing of negative and positive space. I guess you could use the word hard line too. Like, there isn't a blending of the two spaces. There is a very sharp distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Also, like, I grew up in a very spiritually minded family and beliefs that I hold dear to today. And I was always encouraged to imagine what it would be like for the human family to live in harmony with each other in our home. And I've always imagined what this would look like. And I've abstracted this idea over time. And more importantly, I try to imagine how this would feel, this harmony. And I think this has shaped the content of my paintings, actually more than one single thing. That's why you'll see reoccurring themes of the natural world, and there's the human form, but it's abstracted for sure.
Well, when I look at like this piece that's right behind you right now, the black and white one on canvas, it looks like it just seems like there is kind of a spiritual geometry to it, or there is something about it that's very meditative, and those gestures you're talking about, like the authentic gesture, all of that I can see. And so you saying that really does, it gives me a much better, broader understanding of your process. And I think that's so beautiful that really it's about envisioning harmony.
I have a common statement people will say to me, like, "Oh, I just wish I could live in that painting." And I guess that's what I want to do too. Like I'm creating something that a future I'd want to live in very abstract terms, but it's there for sure. I can't deny it.
I think that's it's such an important aspect to your work.
I'm really careful not to inject negative imagery in my work. Like I really want it to be positive. I mean, I can't imagine why, like for my own personal, like why I would want something negative around me.
Trying to bring harmony into a chaotic world is like such, it's a high calling. So you should be you should feel really good. And it's also an intellectual pursuit and a spiritual pursuit. And there's so much there. Becoming an artist is so challenging. So what pushed you into the zone where you were like, okay, I could do this?
From an early age, I don't think I'm unique. I've always, remembered drawing, that we all have these languages and we're really just seeing the world differently that way. And drawing was a really special way to bring ideas out.
Yeah. So that sparked in you a real interest to continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my dad passed away suddenly when I was 14. Mm-hmm. And I poured myself into my sketchbooks. I would like that. I realized the power of drawing to be able to just turn off the world. And I didn't realize at the time, but I look back now and what I was doing was having, deep conversations with yourself and figuring things out that way. So
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Drawing, those were formative years, right? And drawing really dug in and it was it had a place for me.
So what's sparking your interest right now in terms of process? I know when I get intrigued by a process or new material, it can take me down a certain level of inquiry into something. Is there anything like that happening for you at the minute?
It's almost distracting because I'll have ideas for, a new technique or a new medium, and I'm sure you're the same. Trying to stay the course on something is difficult for me. One thing that I'm really intrigued by is of lately is designing and building tools to create a more honest mark. So like sincerity of gesture. If I can build something that will convey in a shorter period of time without logic getting involved in messing up, from point A to point B, if I can build a tool that allows me to convey a mark that's very sincere, that's what I'm really intrigued by.
Oh, I love that. So you're self-taught. Yeah. How do you feel about being self-taught, and what are the pros and cons?
I've come to be comfortable with what I do. And I'm always treated very kindly too, I have to say, by, ones that have gone to school, but
of course, because clearly you are an artist, like you're an artist.
I'm hurt. Yeah. And I naturally, I have a lazy streak. I will figure out the easiest way to do something in the shortest period of time. That's so good. I mean, it clearly comes across my work. So I think what I would have seen maybe opportunities to get into different fields of art that would have, maybe it was more administrative, and I feel maybe I wouldn't have turned into a visual artist. I don't know. It's hard to really speculate, but
you have to be a little bit more self-disciplined in some ways, though. So you may be lazy, but you would never know that because you're creating a lot. So what is the difference to you between pattern design and fine art?
I don't think one can't be the other. I think whatever form of art you're drawn to that comes naturally for you, and if you pour yourself into it and you're dedicated to it, over time, it has the potential to be referred to as fine art. I mean, I think actually, it could be hanging in a museum one day, I mean, I guess it really is your definition of fine art, but
You put in the time and slowly, like if you're doing what you're doing over and over and over again, you become a master at it.
yeah.
Or,
Exactly.
you get greater insights every year that you work on something. And so, I mean, you can't help but learn and grow. And that's,
Mhm.
how many people actually spend that much time looking at pattern as you have in your life.
Mhm.
So, and then you're finding, like, I like how you use the term, the softer side of abstract symbolism. I really like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I think that's that play between the figurative and the abstract. There's an area in there that allows for symbolism, and I like towing that line between the two.
Ah, that is like perfect description of your work. Where do you go for palette inspiration?
Yeah, color is I struggle at where to find palette inspiration. It usually finds me, like
Mhm.
I'll come across things in day-to-day life, and we have the advantage now of having a camera with us at all times. So I'll take a picture of a friend's coat or an old textbook,
Mhm.
and I'll save those, and I'll allow those colors to inform like a neighboring color and build a palette off maybe one or two colors. But I realize that, it's easy for it to invoke like a cheap thrill, but
Mhm.
trying to find something that can pull out a deep emotion is what I'm looking for.
So I'm always sort of looking around to see what other people do.
Oh, me too. I love how some artists use color,
Yeah.
and I aspire to do that as well.
Well, your color is beautiful. Like you have a very specific palette, I think, like black and white. And then yeah,
I'm
which
very
is
comfortable with black and white.
yeah, good. I mean, like it's great. It's a great it's super important. I mean, it's like black, white, and red are the first colors we see. I think they're the most important to the human eye. What was one of the most challenging projects you've had so far as an artist, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, hands down, the wall I painted for VMF, Vancouver Mural
Oh,
Festival.
really?
Yeah, no, my plan was to like upscale a recent painting that I had done at the time, and build brushes to upscale those
Yeah.
mark making.
Yeah.
And I had done some tests in the studio beforehand, but I really did have like I didn't have an idea how it was going to work in real life. I didn't even know what the wall looked like at that point. So
Mhm.
there was some technical problems that I had to solve. Um,
Like right there on the spot.
on the spot, yeah. And then my wife and I, like the night we got there, we projected onto the wall, and I drew out my guidelines with pencil, and then the
Mhm.
next morning I brought up my brushes, and I realized that my brushes weren't to the scale that I blew it up. So I wanted to have the same like honest flow and sincerity of line with my brushes on the original painting, and I didn't want it to come across as contrived, and like I really focus in on like taking one sweep at it. I don't want to go in and fill it in, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
I decided I was just going to freestyle the entire wall and just use the painting as like a
Inspiration.
reference, yeah, an inspiration. So there's a couple hurdles I just had to get through, but I was so pleased at how it turned out, and I actually like it more than the painting.
Yeah, it
And
looks great.
it really taught me you got to go with your gut. But
Yeah.
because I couldn't go by the guidelines, I would
Yeah.
be going up the ladder, and then I
Then
would be going back down the ladder, and then walking back 20 feet with after every brush or a couple brush strokes, and to gain perspective and
yeah.
see what my spatial harmony was like.
Okay, well, let's break down one of your pieces. What's the name of the piece you want to talk about?
It's titled Out from the Land of Confusion. It's acrylic on hardboard, and I work with a lot of different languages and different techniques. It's a good example of some common elements I use in my painting.
Mhm.
So I started with gestural indiscriminate shapes of color,
Mhm.
and they inform neighboring shapes. and creating that positive and negative space. And
Mhm.
then I allow each shape after to inform the texture in my next layer with the black you see over top. So I think it's also, this painting is a good example of mark making in my work, and the idea of that line between the figurative and the abstract.
It's definitely in the landscape. You've got obvious plant shapes, but then there's aspects of it that are very abstract.
If I create something that's too literal, oftentimes I'll go in and correct it, or I'll paint over it. I don't like to give away too much information. The black, like implying texture, I think that's where most people think my work looks like patterns, because I'll have reoccurring like textural kind of elements in it. And I like that. Like I like using texture that way, because it allows your eye to walk around looking for things that seem vaguely familiar, but it allows your imagination to have to do the rest of the work. I think that's why abstraction is special, because it invites you into the painting, and actually it invites you to be part of it. Like, we all see an abstract painting differently, and even for myself, I can look at that same painting differently at different times. It's
Totally.
I see it as like you're looking into the woods, and every time you venture into the woods, you find something different.
Love it. So what is rocking your world in terms of music? Like, do you use music as inspiration? And if so, what are you listening to right now that's just like you're loving?
Usually like electronic ambient is my go-to in the studio.
Me
Anything,
too.
yeah, just droning music, it will put me right into where I need to go. But
I feel like your work is very influenced by kind of it's visual sound.
It is visual sound. Texture, I see it as rhythm. I see it like as the notes and rests in music. And when you create, especially like a patterned or a motif of texture, it creates movement like rhythm.
And when you're talking about trying to get an authentic gesture, that sounds so, it's like you're trying to find that perfect pitch, right? And it's just a metaphor. Music is such a metaphor for this, and this is such a metaphor for music. And
mark making that way, when you get one chance to do something, and if you go in and you try to mess with it, it always betrays the fact that you've done that.
What advice do you have for your younger self about becoming an artist? What do you wish you knew when you were younger?
It's good not to think of yourself as an artist. I know a lot of people say, well, no, you should like think of yourself as an artist. And it's not that you can't, but I think it's more important to think about just being yourself, because that truly is, I think, what an artist is. You have to be comfortable with being yourself, because you're putting something that's very vulnerable out there, and you have to be comfortable with what you are doing. And I think the tendency is you want to change your language, and because you see somebody else's language and it speaks to you, it might be really beautiful. You want to adopt their language because yours isn't fully developed yet. But I think it's really important that you build on that language. And if you're not finding joy, or it's not speaking to you, you have to build, or you have to change your tools or your medium instead of changing your language. I really do believe like we all have this language, and it's really our way of seeing the world, but we might not have been exposed to the tools or the mediums to express those things. Because I mean, they're limited, right? The amount of exposure you get to certain tools to express these languages, and I mean, this could be crossing out of even visual arts into other arts, but there's so many different ways to express yourself, and I think it's just a matter of time if you're exposed to it before you find something that works for you.
So do you have an art prompt for us?
I do. It's based on my love of mark making. And I really find it, like you said, meditative. It's therapeutic. It's just a joy to do. So I'd like to share it with everyone. And so if you got a pad of craft paper and you get 4 or 5 brushes, but I really encourage to try brushes that you maybe wouldn't normally go to, and maybe something that's even more crude or awkward than you're normally used to. And you know, you can get a pad of craft paper for a reasonable price, and just spend some time on a few sheets getting comfortable with the first brush, and then, you know, find a simple like subject matter, like this leaf here, and you don't, the object or the your goal is not to draw what this looks like. Your goal is to draw the feeling of this. And I know I'm gonna like regret saying these things, but it has to be said. There is no other way to say it.
Yeah.
You don't want to draw what this looks like. You want to draw the feeling of this. And the only real way to do that is to be gestural. And that's where I find mark making is really interesting, because it really favors drawing with your mind's eye. So you have to imagine this plant, how it exists in nature. And I mean, I like plants because they're familiar to all of us, and they're simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. And there is no wrong way in drawing this. You're going to find, I think what you're going to find is, as you try these different brushes out, the brush that is the most awkward in the beginning will produce something that you're the most happy with. And it's not, in the end, it might not look like this, but it will definitely have more feeling to it. And that's how I approach it when I'm making my marks on canvas. I'm imagining like a leaf, you know, bursting out of the ground, and, you know, those time-lapse videos, like that's more what I'm doing than trying to capture the contour of it. I'm trying to capture the absolute feeling or essence of it. And the closer I get to that, I know that I'm always usually happy with the results.
What material would you suggest in terms of like paint or ink?
Yeah, like a India ink or a high flow. I really like the high flow inks.
Yeah. Okay. Like what specifically? What brand do you use?
I use Golden. The Golden high flow.
Yeah, those are great.
You know, like when referring brushes, try, you know, even like a house painting brush. You know? Use something like this, or even like something cruder, like I think this is for making like lines in cement, actually.
Oh yeah. Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah. But, and try it dry, like load it up with paint a little bit more, and
just experiment. Okay, cool. I love it. Well, so where can we find you online?
Yeah, TylerKeetonRobbins.com, and the Instagram is the same, Tyler Keeton Robbins.